Welcome back. Nancy Ruby here with Yoga Motion Academy and the second part of this three-part series on the energy of Ayurveda and yoga. So on the first part, we looked at all the different energy systems that are represented in the practice of Ayurveda. So I hope you checked that out. I've added a dosha quiz for you so you can take a look at what comprises your own energy body, your own constitution. And we're not going to go into that in depth in this series, but it's fun to know. So just starting to become more acquainted with or reacquainted with these energies of Ayurveda and how we can bring more balance into our life, a lot of times just by being aware of them, just by conscious awareness of the energy around us. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So here in part two, we're going to look at how we can create a very vibrant, easeful life by aligning with and connecting with the greater energies, both within our body and then way beyond ourselves. And this idea of aligning with energy is, again, aligning with nature, the rhythms of nature, and being a part of it. And that's kind of tricky in our industrial age because we're so connected into technology. I mean, even making this video is one of the benefits of technology. But we also want to recognize that the amount of electricity that we have going on, the amount of technology that's moving on around us, the fact that we can light up our whole night and we're not following the rhythms of sunrise and sunset, full moons and new moons. Maybe you're following those rhythms, and that's wonderful, because when we pay attention to the rhythms of nature, our inner body, our physical body, our energy body, our inner soul really tends to then operate on a much more harmonious level, both inwardly and outwardly. So I'm excited about looking at this, what I'm calling connecting the dots to our connections of the energy that surrounds us and within us. And we look at these different relationships of energy. Then we have the opportunity to find out where we're disconnected and where things might not be working quite so well. And if they are, great. But when we're not feeling up to par, if we're not feeling in balance, it's often very beneficial to look outside of ourselves and not just at the basic symptoms of our imbalances. So I want to thank Kate Stillman for bringing up this list, what she calls the Ayurvedic Manifesto. But this is a kind of I call it connect the dots to the greater energy of our universe. So we're going to go through these 10 steps, and it's really a checklist to check off your relationship with each of these areas of energetic components that affect us and everyone throughout our entire lives, and in fact not just us, but in fact the entire ecosystem. So that's actually the very first connection that we want to look at, is how are we connected to the cosmos, to our outer ecosystem, and really how things flow. When we start to look at this bigger picture, we also are paying attention to how well we can know ourselves. And the more we can know ourselves and our relationship to everything around us, the more we can heal ourselves. And healing is done on a day-to-day basis. We don't even have to be that out of balance to believe that we're healing, because our body is constantly regenerating itself. Our energy is constantly fluctuating. Our mind and emotions are always moving and being affected by our thoughts and also by our situations. So each and every day we're moving, as I've stated before, towards balance or away from it. So that's really the healing that's going on. How much more often can we move towards balance? And when we're out of balance, how compassionate can we be towards that situation, patiently finding the stepping stones to get us back towards balance. So looking at this bigger picture, not just us individually, but how are we connected to the whole of the universe? You know, it's pretty amazing when we look at universal awareness and the things that we know about what goes on out in the outer limits of our life and into the solar system, the cosmic systems. It goes on and on and on. And I think this also lines up with our belief systems. So when we look at the layers of our being, what we believe or don't believe, or the things that we're not certain about believing, also creates a balance or imbalance. So, our belief about where we sit in this system, this ecosystem of our life, has a lot to do with how well settled we are in ourselves. So, are we aligned with the world around us? So, ask yourself that. How often do you put your effort and your energy and your reflections into that bigger picture? Maybe you do that. We just had a beautiful full moon, and I think that full moon, when it's shining down early in the morning, it reminds us of this bigger place, this bigger awareness of our connection to the whole, and that we're here in our body seeing this beautiful full moon, and someone we know and love maybe in a whole different location, and they too can enjoy that beautiful full moon. So that's a connection we can make, right? And then from there we look at making that connection not just with the cosmos, but then within the cosmos, the planets, the ecosystem. Now we have mankind. So how connected are we with our species, right? So we are Homo sapiens, we are intelligent, we are diurnal. And so we think about what are the elements that create the species, and what are the elements of action that actually keep the species in balance. So this might be looking at how the general overall species flourishes. And that's going to have to do with how we eat, how we sleep, how we move, because we know, especially as Homo sapiens, that basically we operate actively in the day. We're meant to eat in the day. We create more bile in the middle of the day. So that's really the time when we're supposed to be eating our calories, our proteins. And then when the evening comes and the sun goes down, being of the species that we are, it's really a time to slow down and rest, because we are diurnal. We don't see that well at night. In the past history of our species, we'd get up early in the morning, go hunting, gather food, prepare thy food, take care of each other, and then settle down. And that's a little bit out of balance these days with the technology and the electricity and the 24/7 type of time clock that so many of us keep. So when you look at yourself in reflection to how the general species would flourish, what is your relationship to that rhythm? This is all about rhythms, right? Which is the next checklist, is what are your rhythms like? How in rhythm are you with seasons, with the daily clock, so the 24-hour cycle, and also with the stages of your life. And I do specialize in a course, Yoga for Healthy Aging. And I really like to talk about the aging process, because what I find, especially in the practice of yoga, is so many people either say, oh, I can't do yoga because I'm too stiff, or oh, I'm too old, or oh, I never did that, so I can't do that now. Or they want to push themselves like, I'm going to do this practice, I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to do this and this and this, and they overdo. So we have this underdoing, believing I can't do it, and then we have this overdoing, wanting to do the same things at the age of 20 now that we're 60. So we really have to look at the stages of our life and what is really in balance with what we eat, how we sleep, and how we move according to that. And it also has to do with the season. So right now we're in the season of spring, and spring is a coming out time. It's a time of cleanse and renewal, and therefore it's the best season for doing a cleanse for our body, for cleansing our habits, cleansing our outer environment, cleaning our house out. I've been doing some major cleaning out of drawers and bookshelves and all kinds of things, and it just feels good to get stuff out. And so that springtime is a time for cleanse and renewal. Then the summer is hotter, and so what kind of activities do you do to keep your cool, right? As we go into fall, we start to slow down. At least this is the season of fall that it's encouraging us to slow down. It's also a very windy time. It's called Vata time. And so we need to do things to settle ourselves after the the wild fieriness of summer. And then we come into winter, and winter is really a time to settle. It's quiet. We're meant to hibernate. And it took me a lot of years to realize that, living in Montana, but actually being a beach bunny. I love the beach and the tropics. And I really fought the winter for many, many years. And so I would fly off and go to the beach when I could, and then come back and still not feel comfortable in the winter. And I'd go skiing. I love the activities, but I wasn't able to settle until I finally, I don't know what did, something clicked. And I dropped in. I dropped into the energy of winter that is hibernation. That's a settling. That's sleeping more and eating comfort food and quieting down and just allowing that. And sure, getting outside and enjoying the snow and the skiing and the beauty of winter. And now winter for me is even too short. So what is your relationship like with the seasons? What's your connection with these changes that happen year in and year out? And then the same thing goes for the day. What's your relationship to the day? To the morning, to the afternoon, to the evening, and then your sleep pattern. So we look at all these things, not so much we're going to get into all of that in this short mini course, but that's the kind of information that I get to share for those of you that are willing to step in deeper. Because I've found that these systems have just enriched my own life, and then the people that I've worked with and shared this information with and helped them understand these patterns and these habits that help them dial in this whole level of balance and well-being. I see their lives shift, flourish, become more vibrant, become more easeful. And so that's why I do this, because I want to share this information, because I know that for me it's been extremely valuable in how I live my life, a very comfortable, satisfying, fulfilling life. And I want to help you do that too. If you're looking at this video, maybe there's something you want to learn more of, so take advantage. But just take a look at this. Maybe you're like, yeah, I got it. This is great. I'm so excited to really pay attention to my days a little bit more. So just by paying attention, you'll notice where you might be able to refine your relationship with these rhythms. The next thing I want to pay attention to is our ancestors. So this is more getting into our humanity. So what is the story of your ancestors? Where are they from? What were their struggles? What were their challenges? What were their rewards? What were their experiences? What countries were they in? What was their relationship to others? And so this is an interesting aspect to look into, because our genealogy tells us a lot. It kind of lets us know where we are in that whole history of things. We do know that our genetics are really important, and we also know now, which is really great in the new science, that we have epigenetics. So we aren't a victim to our genes. We can actually change our genes with our thought process, but it's really good to know what they are. So for me, I know that my ancestors, there's a history of cancer in my family. And so by knowing that, and knowing not only that that disease was there, but why, what were the circumstances around it? And by knowing their circumstances, it helped me understand a little bit more of why they created that imbalance happened. And it inspired me to shift my life into a way that was less stressful and not overdoing and eating right, and just taking those steps that actually support my immune system more fully, because I know that I would be more susceptible if I didn't watch those things. So knowing our genealogy can help us really shift our choices today so that we can create a new path for ourselves, carve our own path. Let's see. I wanted to talk about Constitution next. And before I go there, I wanted to bring up one other thing about ancestry. We also want to know maybe about their struggles. Sometimes our psycho-emotional body may be challenged. I have a friend that her grandparents were in Poland, and they had a very difficult time. They were very challenged. They had lots of hardships, and then her parents came from Poland over to the United States, and she was born in the United States. But she has this psycho-emotional attachment to the suffering that happened back in her grandparents' day. And she lives with this belief that she is suffering because of that. Even though her life in this modern day is very blessed, she has everything she needs. She has, she's not challenged financially, physically, or mentally, but it has affected her because of that emotional connection. So she's actually has created some physical imbalances because she suffers emotionally. So she's closing down and she goes through depression, and she knows this, but at the same time hasn't been willing to really process it and to go in and recognize that yes, her ancestors were struggling and they had a lot of challenge in their life. And she's carrying that through. We carry that stuff through. That's called karma. So the things we come into this life with, that may have something to do with the past. And it's our opportunity to work through those things. So rather than be a victim of them, let them be learning lessons that we can rise above and then honor what those past ancestors went through and let it go. Okay? And maybe the Constitution has a bit to do with that. So our Constitution is, what are the prevalent elements within our body? So in the last video we talked about earth, water, fire, air, and space, the elements of nature. And our Constitution is known as dosha. And so just knowing where we are, like what is our basic constitution, which we call prakruti, these fun words of Sanskrit. And then when we're out of balance would be vikruti. And I shared a little bit about that, my pitta vata constitution. And it's good to know, like, what is your constitution? What was going on in your own parents when you were born? What was happening in the lifetime when you first came into this world? And a lot of that has to do with those elements being generated within your own being. And what was that? And so my parents were very driven. My father, by the time he was 30, had 4 children and a full-time dental practice, and he worked full-time while he went through dental school. He barely made it through dental school. He had a little stress breakdown during the middle of it all. And he was very driven. I'd say he had a little pitta in him, a little fire. But he was kind of one of a Renaissance man. He did everything. He, worked on the house and the garden and the yard. He started foundations, and he was the member of this club and the Rotary. And he was just a go-getter. And so that energy of go-getter, definitely. And then when I was conceived, I was actually conceived very consciously. They wanted to have another child. And so that energy came in like, yes, let's do this. And it's interesting because that's really my energy. I'm a yes, let's do this kind of gal. And so look at where your parents were at upon that time that they came together and conceived you. What were the energies? And maybe even what were the energies happening in the world, in the ecosystem? What was happening around the people that were surrounding you at the time of the year? And all these, and this, what was going on with the ancestors. So all of this is the big picture of the recipe of you. So what is your recipe? What are all the parts that are affecting who you are today? And then how you can live harmoniously with all of those influences. The next thing you want to look at is getting a little bit more refined is what's happening inside our belly fire. So that's pretty specific. This is our constitution, and our constitution will tell us different things about our digestion, whether we're pitta, vata, or kapha. Kapha will be slower digestion. Pittas can burn pretty much anything. Vatas might be a little sensitive, okay? But belly fire is known as Agni. And when we know this, then we can actually make better choices about how we eat and what we eat and when we eat. If we eat spicy foods or more what we call sattvic foods, remember that was the middle of the doshas or the gunas. So we have really fiery action, activity, and then we have stillness, and then in the middle we have balance. Okay, so that was the gunas. And so, what's happening in your belly fire? How are you digesting? How are you digesting not just your food, but the world around you, right? Are you more heavy and downward, or are you upward and light? Maybe if you're too upward, you get, gastric indigestion. You might have a little acid indigestion. Things come up. Or maybe you have some indigestion in your belly or some constipation, that's energy down. So here we are again looking at up and down, expansive contraction, which once more is talking about the gunas. So what things are moving? The whole universe is expanding and contracting. Where was that expansion and contraction happening when you were conceived, and where has it been expanding and contracting through your lifetime? And how have you been in harmony or disharmony with those things? From belly fire, we're going to go into then our basic health history. And that's just good to know, even though, again, we know that we can really take responsibility for our own health, much like, the history of my ancestors and their diseases that were more common in that line. But when it comes to health history, really looking at, what you've gone through in your life, when you were a child, what imbalances did you deal with, or with any of them, and what has your history been over time, and not just what your imbalances have been, but what's your environment been like. So for me, my health history, I told you my father was a go-getter, and it really got the best of him because he actually died of cancer at the age of 35. And when I was only 3 at the time, and so I came into his life, and he got ill pretty much about a year after I was there. I did end up spending a lot of time with him because he was home and not working and doing all the stuff that he used to do. But that fire, that burning colon cancer, when I could look at the imbalances, he had a lot of emotional stress because he was doing so much. And for me, I know that I've had to really tame that in myself because I tend to be that go-getter. And I've learned, thank goodness, through my practices of yoga and this whole energy of Ayurveda, to chill and to do my meditation each day no matter what, and to take care of what I put into my body, and to really watch those things. And back in the 50s, they weren't watching that quite so much. The smoking was prevalent, lots of rich foods, and he was a man that was really pushing, and I think pretty stressed out because colon cancer, stress is what causes imbalances. But knowing that, I had a little fear of that unconsciously in my earlier days. In my late 20s, I was going strong. And I did some therapy around this. I had this underlying fear, and I didn't know what it was. And it was really about my father's story. I figured I was going to be out of here by the time I was 35. So we look at our patterns, and even if we don't consciously pay attention to them, we may subconsciously feel like we're going to repeat what happened before us, either with our ancestors or our immediate family. And so this is why it's important to really look at these relationships and connect the dots to what we're experiencing here and now in our own body, mind, and spirit, and what may be affecting us that can go very well hidden if we don't give it our attention. And the other thing that happened in health history is my parents did smoke cigarettes. They quit pretty close to the time when I came out because my father was ill too. So, of course, they quit. My mom quit. But I have 3 older siblings that lived during the time that they were smoking heavily, and they all are suffering to this day with very heavy allergies. Not even just seasonal allergies, but all year round. And that was something else that I really looked at in my own constitution, is I have a tendency towards inflammation. If I'm in the garden too long, I do have some allergic response, but I'm constantly making choices that decrease my inflammatory responses. I make choices in my diet that doesn't exasperate my allergic responses. I make choices in how I live my life so that I don't, my body, which is weak around this area, so I'm strengthening my body's immune system with how I'm living my life. And that's what I'd love you to take a look at. If you feel like there's an area of weakness, if you're dealing with pain or sleeplessness or indigestion or depression, anxiety, anything that doesn't feel vibrant, if you're not thriving in your life, then it really does help to take a look at all these things and really connect the dots to what's the underlying cause and what can we do with it. Okay, there's a lot we can do. Taking pharmaceuticals is the last resort. And I'll tell you, if you're just going to disguise the symptoms of any imbalances, you're never going to heal those problems. So we really need to get down. Not to say there's not a time to use our allopathic medicine, but there's an overindulgence in the pill that takes away the symptom. We need to really take a look at what's our whole relationship, what's the connection between our bodies, our minds, our spirit with the bigger picture, and how we can operate more harmoniously day to day. And then we're more effective in the world. Then we can actually start to express ourselves more, our unique individual self, and offer the gifts that we're here to give in this life, because we all have something to offer. So that's where we come to nourish ourselves. Good lead-in, huh? So we're offering, but at the same time, it's called Nourish Thyself. How well are you taking care of yourself? This is something I've always been pretty good at. Thank goodness. Okay. So somehow in my life that became a really important thing right away. Being kind of a middle child amongst many children, I just always took care of myself. And it paid off overall, because even in the midst of chaos, I've learned, and especially by tapping into the practice of yoga by the age of 21, thank you, really needed that, is that I can still look and see, like, what's going to bring me back to my center. Even when things are raging around me or not moving enough around me, how can I bring myself back to center? And that's what nourishing ourselves does. So this might be how we feed ourselves, of course, what we put in this food body, and the self-care techniques that we do. Like, how do we care for ourselves? Do we get regular massages? We'll learn a little bit about Abhyanga, self-massage, in my Ayurvedic course. Do we allow ourselves to get out in nature each day and appreciate nature? Do we play enough in our life? Do we have connection with loved ones? Do we take the time out just to be? And in our society, there's a lot of doing and a lot of distraction with all those things in technology, and we're not taking the time to just be with ourselves and to sit in stillness and just listen and observe all this stuff that goes on inside here. And really the miracle of it all, can we just be with it and develop compassion and kindness and care for ourselves? Because once we can do that, then our well springs are filled up, and then it just overflows to those around us. So how are you taking care of yourself? And one way you can is to take this checklist, and I have a PDF for you to print, and really take some time and consider these things. How does all this connect in your life? Okay. And we're going to also look at, once we take care of ourselves, it's kind of like the first and second chakra. There's so many systems in yoga and Ayurveda. The first chakra, which is the pelvic floor, is all about our basic needs being met. So food and water and shelter and rest. So that's nourishing ourselves, right? And when those basic needs are taken care of, then we're more able to connect with others. Then we can move into relationship wholeheartedly, okay? And so that's about our community. How do we commune with others? And community has a lot to do with our habits. So when we look at how we're treating ourselves or how we're moving through our day or the seasons of the year or the seasons of our life, take a look at who you're hanging out with, because we are very influenced by the people in our closest circle. In fact, there's a suggestion that you look at who are the 5 people that you spend most of your time with, and or the 5 people that influence you the most in your life, and what are their rhythms, what is their connection to all of this, because we become like the people we surround ourselves with. And I know that was a big change for me when I was introduced to the practice of yoga. I was only 21. I was living in Park City, Utah, and it was a total ski party town. So what do you think? I was partying away. And it was fun, and I was kind of surprised at the wildness of it all, but I grew up in Southern California. My siblings were all hippies in the 60s, so it wasn't a shock or anything. And I was having fun with it, but then I got introduced to a yoga practice, and I thought it was pretty cool because I could do the poses pretty well. I'm hyper flexible, so I could do fancy things. But over the course of a very short time, it actually was the course of a summer, I came back, I studied, and I just dove in as deeply as I could to the yoga practice, and the physical practice was really fun, and I realized it was more than stretching. There was so much strength involved, and there was so much stamina involved. That surprised me. And then what really surprised me was my change of mind. And I started waking up, and that's what yoga is really all about. It's about waking up and seeing more clearly ourselves and the world around us, seeing all of this more clearly and our relationship to it all. And so where I was at that time is the people that were surrounding me, I was starting to choose different habits. I no longer wanted to abuse my body with drugs and alcohol. I started to pay attention to what I was eating, whereas before it was just something to throw in my mouth and swallow. And I really started paying attention to the quality of my actions. And what happened is I had to change communities. I mean, some of those people are still acquaintances today, the ones that are still alive. A lot of them didn't make it much past their 40s or 50s because they really lived a very damaging lifestyle in their habit choices. And so I actually had to remove myself from that community and leave. So I basically fled my community because I wanted to start over. I wanted to live a holistic healthy life. And so sometimes that happens. And there's other times when the people that surround us are really the ones that are our biggest support. So maybe we don't even realize how much support we have unless we reach out and ask for help. So noticing again who you're spending your time with and how you can spend time with those people that are supporting your health and well-being. And if you're looking at any changes in your lifestyle, any shifts of your habits, find someone that's already there and let them be your inspiration. It doesn't mean you have to let go of everyone else. You can keep them around too, but you want to have the influences. And perhaps even just watching these videos or coming to class. This is why I like to teach this, because I have so many students and clients that have come into this course of study and been able to really shift their habits and let go of limiting beliefs and really awaken to their own true nature, which is like living our best life, just living feeling comfortable with who we are. And that's oftentimes what these circles become, these circles of support that are studying yoga and Ayurveda together. So if you feel like you need a tribe, Yoga Motion's a tribe, and their tribe's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It actually extends all around the world, but it's really nice to be surrounded in a circle with people that you can have these discussions with. Then we can go back into those other tribes, those other circles that might not have this conversation, and it's okay. We can just be still with that. So last but not least is this: how do you raise the bar? And I just love that saying. Raise the bar. Okay? Because as long as we're learning and growing, then we can live youthful all our life. If we get stuck in a rut, remember that samskara, stuck in a rut, the same patterns over and over again, our brains get really dull. So we're starting to learn so much about neuroplasticity, but our brains can remain more stimulated when we have shifts and changes. When we even just taking a walk around the block, go the other direction or take a different street. You know, how you go through your day, you want rhythms and consistency, but then you want variety as well. And you want new information coming in. And not just the news, not the damaging information that's so scary and anxiety ridden, and you know, that just turn off the news occasionally and read something that's really inspiring to you. Learn something more about your genealogy and about the cosmos. Really open yourself up to expanding your knowledge just to stimulate your neocortex. And what will happen when your brain gets stimulated is you also feel more relaxed emotionally because you're feeding yourself, right? And then when you're feeding yourself, you recognize your intelligence, and then your soft animal body of your lizard brain, your most basic brainstem, can feel safe because you know you can take care of yourself. When we know we can take care of ourselves, then we can reach out and help those around us. And that's what this is all about. This is about making the bigger connection. So take a look on the biggest connection, the cosmos. Start to bring it in and notice ourselves as a species and what your relationship is there to this human life. And then how that works in, you know, the rhythms of the seasons and the days and your lifespan. And then our own ancestors, really appreciating where we come from. What are the stories of the past? And if you don't know that many, you know, maybe you want to research that a little bit. That might be something new. And then really taking into consideration what you are made of, what elements are alive in you. And instead of fighting them, how can we work with them? How can we nourish these elements that we are? So taking care of ourselves, knowing how we operate, what kind of fire burns, what our symptoms are, or what the health history is, so we can take care of our imbalances before they come to the surface, right? So get ahead of the game and then nourish yourself. Nourish yourself on a regular basis. This is so important. And nourish yourself by being in community. So this is what I love, and I really love sharing this information to you. And I would love to have you join this community because we have some wonderful ways to support each other in really raising the bar in our own well-being and living a life that truly is vibrant and joyful and easeful. And that's what it's all about. Come back for one more video, and this one we're actually going to look at very specific cases, a few different examples of where we may see imbalances, very common things that happen for our society, and how all this information can actually make it really simple to get really clear with what's happening and how to make a change towards balance. Okay, and if you want to learn more about that stuff, I've mentioned I've got a couple courses coming up. If you want to dive in with me and join a tribe live, that you are so welcome to do that. I would love to share more. In the meantime, watch for video number 3, and we'll continue this study in the energy of Ayurveda and yoga. Namaste.